All right. Hello and welcome to our next budget AMA session. Today's session is going to be with the product committee and also with the civics committee. And a couple of quick ground rules for today. The goal of today is to hear the presentations from the committees. We're asking the committees to keep your presentations to around 20 minutes if you can, do the best you can. And then we'll take a segment of questions after that, and then we will move on to the other committee, and we're starting first with product and allowing them to talk about this. Is, I believe, we're doing um, the research area that the product committee has been compiling. Is that correct,
We're
Sam?
doing a mix of all of it.
Mix of all of it. All right, very good. And now we know. We've got one more in the waiting room. Let me get Phil in here. And the we ask that everybody listen to the presentation until the presentation's completed. When the presentation's over, there will be time for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand to be recognized for the question. If you have a follow-up question after your question, that's totally fine. But let's keep your first question and or comment to 2 minutes, and we'd have one follow-up, and then let anyone else in the queue go before addressing your additional questions. So we give room for everybody to have a chance to get their questions answered. And on that note, Sam, if you'd like to take it away.
Hello, folks. So I have on here a QR code. This is for our open calls. I'll have the same QR code at the end, but if anyone wants to scan it right now, I'll give you a few seconds. And with that, let's get started. Hi, I'm Sam Leathers. I am the chair of the product committee. I have Kyle here also, who's the vice chair of the product committee. Our key aims are to facilitate an open and transparent process to create a shared 2025 Cardano roadmap, and to facilitate the creation of an open and transparent process to create a shared long-term 5-year vision for Cardano, and also to provide a recommendation for scope of the research budget bucket. So we've broken the buckets down into 4 pieces. The top one here I have is the vision creation. This one's aimed at funding all the work, effort, and expenses needed to create and facilitate the first version of a community-led, open, and transparent process to create an evolving 5-year vision for the Cardano ecosystem. Then we have the academic research bucket. This is aimed at funding all the mid and long-term academic forward-looking research. It will be useful in providing long-term direction to the ecosystem. And then we have the product research bucket. Kyle will be talking about this later. It's aimed at funding all the short and midterm user and market research. And then we have an overhead bucket. This is a small bucket aimed at funding the work and overhead this committee will have in supporting the above activities. So let's first talk about high-level goals here, broad topics and high-level goals. Our biggest goal, which is pretty much the main goal of Cardano, is to get more usage, get more people in. How we do that can be broken down into some smaller pieces. So for example, governance. So we need to evolve as the governance changes, as we see what's going on there. So that's going to be one of the topics we're going to be looking at for bringing users in, is going to be governance. The next thing is scalability and interoperability. This is about maintaining the development of Cardano with an emphasis of increasing the scalability and interoperability. This is basically keep the lights on, keep doing what we're doing, working towards, and then in 2026 we'll have the 2030 vision, which will be the big grand vision. And that's this third topic here, is actually creating that vision, working with the community through distributed processes to come up with a vision that we all agree on is our future. So the vision creation sub bucket, this is the one I'm most excited about, because it's what brings us all together and gets we basically get to play the role of Charles. Charles basically made the vision for so many years, and now we get to come in as a community and create this vision ourselves. So for this, the work is basically going to be working with the community, doing Twitter spaces, when we go to events, basically getting people together and get a whiteboard out and roadmap things basically out for what we want to do for the next 5 years. So then we have the academic research sub bucket. This is all about continuing to position ourselves as leading 3rd generation blockchain. And we need about a 5-year research agenda that focuses on security, sustainability, scalability, and interoperability. The vision builds on our track record of 100% uptime, ensuring continuous improvement and maintaining our position at the forefront of blockchain technology. So we broke this down into some categories here. The first category is the world's operating system. This is how we operate with the world, whether that be financial operating system, which was the old primary vision, but this is basically expanding out of that, where it might not just be financial. We might be doing other things on the blockchain, and things like that we're looking at. I'll go into more detail on that bucket. There's a number of slides in here that I've hidden, so please go through the entire presentation and read everything in it. But I'm trying to keep this down short right now. Ouroboros Omega is basically the consensus of the blockchain, how we all agree the blocks are supposed to be made, what fair transaction processing looks like, whether we have multi-resource consensus through Minotaur, whether we do proofs of useful work, what our congestion control things are, things of that nature. Tokenomics is about the design of tokens and basically how they're profitable and basically what the strategy is for that. So getting some research in there that can basically help people building products know how to design their tokenomics for the product they're building, for a side chain, for instance, or a partner chain, or an L2 even. Then we have a global identity bucket. This is about decentralized identity management and reputation management as well. So the main goal here is everyone owns their own identity, and then it's decentralized and they can share just the bits that they want with someone. And basically you get credentials from certain organizations that validate your identity, for instance. Then you have Democracy 4.0. This is one that we think is going to be important, but we think the research should probably wait 6 to 9 months before starting and see how things are operating now. Because I don't think it's very profitable for us to go full head on with trying to identify how we want to evolve democracy without seeing how it's acting now and where the pain points are and what we need to fix. Internet Hydrated is all about the L2, Hydra tail protocols, and interhead optimization tools, things of that nature. I would also put into this one optimistic rollups if there's anything we need to do for like Midgard, where we need to do some more research for them to be able to get to their next level type thing. And then Interchains is all about partner chains like client infrastructures, consensus innovation, how we can interact with other chains type things. So I just gave one of the slides here as a thematic focus area for the world's operating system, just to show like what the other slides look like where they go into detail here. So like the state machine contract environment that we talk about in the world's operating system, the goal is to research an application programming framework for Cardano smart contracts and to define formal semantics of the application programming framework to facilitate formal and mechanized reasoning about contracts implemented with that framework. Essentially, take computer science, state machines, and figure out how to do that with smart contracts. And then the location-based services and smart contracts is about how do you have a smart contract that basically requires proof of location. So I have to go to this particular city in Europe basically to be able to execute this smart contract to be able to do what I want to do. The other thing it can be used for is how to incentivize the rewarding of block rewards to enforce geographic diversity among consensus nodes. So this is a QR code for the academic research working group. If you're interested in participating in it, please scan the QR code. I'll give you about 5 seconds here. And moving on, Kyle, up to you on product research.
Hey, thanks, Sam. Okay, so from a high level, what we need to do is we need to make data-driven decisions in order to really effectively nail where we want to hit for market fit and create the technologies that we need to create and implement to win. So 2025, basically, we want to begin doing research that's into data that's going to provide us the insights we need to make those data-driven decisions. And ultimately, that information is going to feed back into the 2026 and longer vision. And so on this next slide, you'll see a wide range of topics that the product committees kind of come up with areas where we need to conduct this research. And we've identified what is most likely the most important piece of research, and that is identifying what transaction volume we need to reach versus, the price of ADA versus the transaction fees, as well as potentially altering reward mechanisms in order to achieve ecosystem sustainability, right? Reward reserves are depleting. We've got a finite clock to replace those reserves with revenue from transaction fees, right? And so that's kind of the idea, is say, okay, what target do we need to hit, right? And once we understand the potential targets we can hit to achieve sustainability, then we understand which technologies need to be in place to do that, right? Because right now, as it stands, we likely don't have everything in place we need to hit a transaction volume that would sustain reward reserves. Another example might be, is there a need or opportunity for settling other change transactions into Cardano's L1? Now, this is just an example of identifying market opportunities. A lot of these research initiatives are going to help us identify where markets may be emerging, where markets may be declining, and ultimately help us craft and shape our vision so we can achieve a ecosystem that enables our entrepreneurs to nail product market fit.
And then we have the overhead sub-bucket. So this is a small sub-bucket that aims to cover potential overhead that we might have as a product committee ourselves, and facilitating and managing the 3 buckets above. We are very much in favor of this basically being very lean. We don't want to put a lot of money in overhead, but we want to have a little bit of wiggle room if we need it, type thing. So this is, again, the QR code to join our open calls and participate. We welcome anyone that wants to come and ask questions there. And with that, let's move on to questions.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you guys taking the time to inform the community on what you've done up to this point. And happy to open the floor now. If there are any questions from any member of the community, just raise your hand. Aisteen, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I'm just curious about like this Ouroboros Omega. It's a new monger. I've tried to follow a bit on the production side for a while, but like, what's grouped under it? What's the planned future of this? How broad this is? How much of the research is going into it? Like, I'm just curious if you can tell a bit more about the Ouroboros Omega.
Okay, so under Ouroboros Omega, this is basically a bucket for just consensus mechanisms in general. What we have listed in here right now that the research people have told us that they want to put focus on, the one is multi-resource consensus. This is basically allowing you to have multiple consensus mechanisms on a network, and combine that all together into a single leadership schedule, essentially. Then you have proof of useful work. This is so proof of work is basically about doing insane amounts of work basically to make blocks. Proof of useful work says, well, can we take that insane amount of waste of resources just randomly hashing stuff and actually do something useful with that? Like, I don't know, maybe like run an AI agent or something like that, and prove that basically we're using that information to run this AI agent. And then that can be put back into the whole Minotaur piece, basically. And you have some proof of useful work, you have some proof of stake, and then you have some whatever other consensus mechanism. It might be like coming from another chain, essentially. So that's those 2 pieces there. Oh yeah, space doesn't work because we're on this page. Then congestion control. The main goal here is to expand the space of congestion control mechanisms, improving on application diversity, predictability, resource heterogeneity. Yeah, I do think we might have a couple researchers on here if they want to talk more about it. But yeah, that's the ones I have in there.
I can provide a bit more details if you want.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So basically, on top of what Sam just said, there's also some iteration on throughput and finality. We have already done some work on paras and layers. There will be continuation of this work to continue improving the finality solution. So come with something that could be faster than Paras, and also try to come with something a bit lighter than Layers. I don't think we will be able to improve the throughput of Layers. What we can probably provide is a way to minimize the resources that we use in Layers. And again, I think it's quite important to understand here that especially because there's already some ongoing work on Paras and Layers as an innovation stage. Here we are talking about the research stage, and usually when we are talking about research, we are talking about a 2 to 3 years horizon at least. So it's why we are basically doing some incremental update on what we have done so far on finality and on throughput based on what we are currently doing.
And the other thing that's really important to mention whenever you're talking about a research bucket, research doesn't go into something assuming that it's going to get some result out of it. Sometimes you'll have a paper that's written that's 100 pages explaining why this is actually impossible and it can't be done. So there's no guarantee that anything you put into research is necessarily going to come to fruition.
Well, I'd like to expand on that expectation too, and just from the stats that I had reviewed, and the research guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but of the 200 or so research papers that have been published, only about 50 of them, or 25%, were actually used in the Cardano protocol. So we've got to set that expectation that we are going to research things, and we need to research things that may not directly ultimately come to fruition, and that's kind of the point of research.
All right.
Logan.
Yeah.
Hey guys, how's it going? Is my sound coming through okay?
Yep.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm on a road trip for the holidays. So yeah, just had a quick question about Democracy 4.0, and really just want to learn more about the work that has to be done there. Just really personally passionate and about that utility of blockchain, and I see Cardano as a blockchain that is very well positioned to be that solution for governments and counties and all that stuff around the world. So just want to learn more about the work that needs to be done for Democracy 4.0, and anything else there is relevant to know about it.
So again, as Kyle and I had stressed earlier, we think it's a little premature to actually start looking into Democracy 4.0 until we have some information about how things are working currently. But what the researchers have put forward basically is an idea of next level governance protocols to capture requirements around governance and applications within Cardano, and design suites of robust and secure protocols that meet the captured requirements, with possible trade-offs around cost, scalability, runtime, and layer 1, layer 2 footprints. And then the governance incentives, the primary objective to explore the relevant research questions that pertain to launching a Voltaire and Catalyst, and basically how to incentivize things, how to get people to vote, what people should be paid to vote if they're paid to vote, things of that nature.
Yeah, and Logan, just to kind of extend on that a little bit, we thought it would be much, much more valuable as an ecosystem to be able to incorporate all the things we're not expecting, or all the things that that could go wrong, or that don't necessarily go according to plan, as we're just launching this whole new governance infrastructure. There's going to be anomalies that nobody expected, and to be able to use those data points as inputs into this research would be extremely valuable, and that's why we recommend waiting 6 to 9 months.
Nicholas.
Hey Sam, hey Kyle, I hope you're doing well. Great presentation. I was just wondering if you considered that in your discussions about where the revamping of the reward mechanism would fit in. I mean, this is something, right, where some people would say it's we start with this sin of not having considered an actual reward mechanism for DReps when we now implement this governance model on Cardano. Just curious how you thought about that.
So my personal opinion is that we shouldn't do anything until we see how the existing system is operating. I don't necessarily think we should run in and basically say this is how we're going to reward DReps and then see how that happens. I think we should look at what happens first with what we're rolling out, because I mean that's happening regardless, and not rush to implementing a automated incentivization scheme until we see how this all plays out and where the problems are and what we need to fix.
I might add that if there's any poli-sci major out there that wants a dissertation paper, this is the Cardano blockchain launch of its constitution, and the ensuing year after is going to be very ripe for many of those students to look at what we're doing and and learn some lessons from us, because that's what we're doing here is blazing a new trail.
And absolutely, what we're doing here is, since it's so like novel, we don't necessarily have to fund all this ourselves. People are going to look at what we do and they're going to try to poke holes in it, and they're going to come up with better things basically to write research papers for universities and not necessarily be funded by us at all to actually identify this stuff. And by having that happen more organically, it might even be more validating for us, because we don't have the people that are designing the system are also the ones that are researching how it worked, how well things went, what things went wrong. So I mean, that's absolutely why I think not pushing forward on Democracy 4.0 until 9 months out of seeing how this actually operates in practice makes a lot of sense, and maybe even further. But yeah, that's my opinions on it.
Thank you, Sam. All right.
Anyone have any other questions?
Yeah, if we have any other questions for Sam or Kyle, we can take them now. We've got about 4 minutes remaining before we need to switch over and give the Civics Committee an opportunity.
Yeah, I was just gonna. So my interpretation of Democracy 4.0 is like getting. I don't know. I missed some part of the meeting, but like getting real world organizations. But is Democracy 4.0 just about Cardano governance and evolving that, or also about evolving like societal governance with the Cardano block?
I mean, that's a huge question. There definitely is an opportunity to basically do research on how blockchain could be used to improve government elections and whatnot. I absolutely agree with that. But yeah, it's not really in the bucket as it stands, at least from what I've read.
Yeah, it's not in this. But I mean, if it's something that the community want to bring to the table, it's also the idea behind having a 5-year plans. We have some room to adjust and to take into consideration the topics that the community will want to bring. So it's something that we can try to address if there's some will from the community to address this point.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Logan, for your question. Thank you, everyone, for your participation up to this point. And we're going to keep things moving ahead here. I think I got about 2 minutes left. If there's any like sort of final question for the product committee right now over this great new set of material that they've given us to chew on.
So one final pitch, if there's no other questions, we are going to be formulating a short-term version, 2025. That's going to be much more quicker. We kind of have started outlining that, but something to look forward to in early Q1 next year that we will publish, and we will get feedback through GitHub, and it will be easy for people to participate and make comments and whatnot.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it. Sam, Kyle, Nicholas Beery, for your participation as well. Thank you for coming in from the research side as well. Appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. I'd like to, at this point, we're going to hand it over. We've got Nico Cerny and we've got Eystein Hansen from the Cardano Civics Committee, and I'd like to welcome them to begin their presentation whenever they're ready.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, we are a bit on the back foot on this, not such a fancy presentation, but I think we'll start off with the main slide showing the 3 different priorities. So let's see if we can. There's 3 main goals we want for the Civics Committee. It's to ensure that governance of Cardano is accessible, fair, and transparent. And to do that, we are trying to focus on 3 key areas. So We are going to make sure we're focusing on all of the support, all of the governance participants. So we will talk a bit about the DReps, how we're planning to support them. The Constitutional Committee, the SPOs, and the ADA holders. And I will actually highlight like the SPOs. It's area that's been a bit forgotten in all this work we've done now leading up to the Constitution Convention, but it's really important we get those numbers up as well. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. Then the other key area we'll talk about is steward the governance process. So that's some really key-ish things coming up there. Basically, the ratification event, 31st January, need to keep making the community educated about the process and make sure we get as good numbers as we can on that and follow up with the ratification process. Then we have actually election of the new CC board. So that's going to happen around September. But of course, you need to have election process way before that time. So we need to have a budget and plan for that. And we also are stewards of some of the governance tooling that's related to this. So for example, election tooling for CC members to be elected, all of this like gov tools and all these things that's related to the stewardship of the governance process. And something that's important to me is this like making sure we're facilitating governance improvement. And I really like that we're aiming now for and setting aside in the budget for an annual report on the state of Cardano governance. This will help us really measure where we are and then have something to reach for. So for future budgets as well, we have something to see and measure the effect of the money put in and how the actual effect of that was in this report. So that's going to be a really important like accountability metric as well for us in the civics. So yeah, that's like the very broad strokes of it. I think I will talk a bit more in detail on each, and maybe Nicholas, if you want, you can join in on that as you see fit. Yeah, so let's start with the DReps. So what the bucket says is like compensation and training and tooling. And what does that actually mean? First of all, if you're going to have compensation, I agree with what Samuel Letters said, and this is something we have discussed internally in Civics as well, in this working group for the budget. It's like we need to make sure the community is enabled to make that decision. So what we have done is we set aside a portion in the budget for a potential for rewards. I'm not saying we're having rewards, we're saying we have the potential there for it. But also, more importantly, we're actually starting with more workshop and discussion around how we actually reward DReps if we're going to reward them. And we want to have the slow and steady approach as we have with everything else in Cardano. We want to see how the DReps shake out and make sure they are part of that conversation. So they're also part of how this structure should look like. I think that's really important to make those early experiences in terms of how much commitment, how much effort, all of these things before you actually commit to a reward scheme. So we already had some discussions on this, like we had the DRep Pioneer programs where we did present some of the research papers that's done on 4 different reward schemes. But again, that's research. We also need to have some data now from the DReps before we try to match this. So that's one of the main goals here, like make sure we start with those workshops and make sure we have set aside enough to reward DReps. Then in terms of training and tooling, we still have a lot of ways to go on all of this tooling. Gov tool in terms of what we present, how we present it, how we register, making sure all of the wallets are able to do these things. We have a long way to go there, and we have set aside a budget on that. And I was not deep into that part of the discussion, so Nicholas, if you have any to add there, you could perhaps, but if not, I will.
Do you mean in regards to the tooling? Or... Yeah. I mean, right. The key to governance is also that we have proper tooling available, and that applies to all of the different roles. And you'll go into that a bit later, probably, Einstein. But what we just need is also, as I said, an easy access way for people to participate in governance, right? And that means that they can do it from their phone, they can do it from, I don't know, for whatever way they choose, and then also that it caters to their needs, right? So that it's not just, for example, only in English, but we also have a multilingual approach to that. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about also this like more breaking down the language barriers. That's also part of that. So that's the broad strokes of the DReps. And in terms of the Constitutional Committee, in terms of supporting there, there's a lot there. Like on the administration side, it's just like all of these. How you have secretaries, how you help them with technical support, the legal support, and this is actually really important to me. It's like we need to make sure that we have a robust constitutional committee in terms of legal resilience. So how you actually structure your organizations so that they are resilient in terms of lawsuits and in terms of whatever could happen, in terms of like geographic distribution and how you set them up, like what type of structure you set them up with. So having that support and having that from experts is really crucial. And basic stuff like even the hardware keys, so we ensure the safety of that. And of course, we are also looking at reunification for CC. It's a job with quite significance in terms of its impact on the ecosystem. So we believe we should be giving them reunifications, and this will attract the best people to be in these positions.
And
training.
one thing, exactly. If I can just quickly add something here, right? It's very hard to understand how much workload is required in the CC if you're not part of it. And of course, right? I mean, the thing that you might say now is okay, but it's also the job of the CC to show us as the community how extensive the workload is, right? Which is correct. But one thing that we need to understand, right? And I just had a workshop this week with other ICC members, and really kudos to the community elected councils. They're doing a great job. Also the people in Intersect that are voluntarily doing that. The problem is if we now after the next hard fork, right, have an influx of a lot of governance actions, and these teams then don't have the time anymore to assess each single governance action in detail, we could end up in a situation where either governance actions just don't get ratified anymore, right? Or we could end up in a situation where the quality of the assessments goes down. And this is something that we need to avoid. So therefore, we also need tooling that makes that more efficient. But yeah, go ahead.
Well said, and that is why I want to encourage it. And I'm an ICC member, so I only contributed with the actual numbers of work hours I did. So I did not say anything in terms of how large it should be, but it was clearly something in the working group that we felt is important because it improves the quality of the governance itself. Then in terms of the staking pool operators, like I touched upon it briefly, but like actually this is one of my real worries, is that we make sure we have the numbers on the staking pool operators high, that we don't have a very large portion doing abstain, but actually having SPOs that are engaged in governance and understand the governance and understand the tooling that is available to them, the scripting packages that you can use for voting, the guild tool operators, all of these things that are there and can help them. But that the SPOs are a fairly large body of people. It's more than 3,000 pools. So you actually need to reach out to them, and you need to make sure that this material is available for them. You need to set up training packages for them. So we increase those numbers. So that's also in the initial phase, but it's something I think is really important as well. And of course, for any governance system, you also need the actual people who have the voting power, that's delegating the voting power. They need to be educated governance actors. So the ADA holder is the ultimate one in power, and we need to ensure that we keep pushing out education material for ADA holders going forward. And it could be anything from what we're doing now, like just following the ratification process, but also like tracking how these governance actions affect the ecosystem, and the interaction of the governance system. So I think those are also key issues in terms of supporting governance participation. Yeah, let's move on to stewardship of the governance process. I think that the main task here first is like ensuring this ratification process is successful and as educated as possible. So you will see many of the working group members being very active on this in the civics and also delegates, and also in terms of like all of the legal expertise and consultancies we're doing around all of this. So ensuring that this ratification process is as good as possible. And the next big item is this election process itself. So making the platform, making the election tools for the CC members. I will also add one thing, like this is why we don't yet go out with numbers, is because we actually don't know how the final constitution will look like, and we don't know the full extent of the stewardship. Like, let me give you an example. So there's currently some requirements for technical review, and that could be different in the final constitution, and how we set up and support around these things could depend on how the final ratified constitution ends up. So this is one of the key reasons why we're still not giving the exact numbers and the exact plan for that. But we know we'll have this selection process, and we also know that we want to support the CC if they want to have experts for consultancy. We will hire for them, and in terms of legal advice as well. Anything to add there, Nicholas, maybe, on the stewardship?
No, all good.
Okay. Then the final one is facilitating governance improvements. So I think this is also quite key. I would like to start with Anda, and it was inspired by one of the current working group members. So Ken Ladd joined the working group. He's doing like this report where he's looking at the different power players. Basically, if you are both a CC member, a DRep, and an SPO, and if you have this separation of power, and measuring how well is this separation of power. That's an example of one of these metrics we're definitely going to be following, and defining like the quality of the governance. And again, this depends on how the final constitution pans out, but currently there's a real emphasis on making sure we have this separation of power. It's encouraged, and if it's encouraged, it's also, I believe, the civics job to make sure that we track it and make sure it's very visible and educate people about it. Then in terms of like technical requirements, there might be some constitutional depth. We don't know. We need to make sure we're capable of handling that if that happens. There was, for example, like a patch with a SPO null in terms of how they voted in the past, and we don't know if these types of events will happen in future. So we need to have some form of contingency around this, and make sure that we can improve these things as well as needed with the constitution as it's ratified. Yeah, I think those are the main items, and we will have, I've used 50 minutes now for the presentation, so maybe that's fitting with around 50 minutes for questions.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much, Eystein. Thank you, Nico. Appreciate you guys getting us up to speed on what is going on with this Cardano Civics Committee. And so again, let's open the floor for questions. If anybody has any questions for Nico and Eystein. I will put that Logan had a question in here, and we've kind of had a little discussion over it in the chat. But he had mentioned that the CC could use an AI agent that looks for potential conflicts with the Constitution. And of course, there's some chat going on there about that, including, it looks like a link to a Project Catalyst proposal. So if you guys have any comments to add on that particular thing, that'd be.
Yeah, I can add some comments on that. I've talked with several groups who have been thinking about AI agents in terms of like not voting for the CC, but assisting them and helping them filter data. So one of the main things is like, from my point of view, it's important is to encourage diversification, because you get really vulnerable if you have a single AI agent that helps you on something and that AI agent makes a mistake. You have a problem because you're filtering data and that data might be presented wrongly. So how we proceed with that is needs to be done very carefully, but absolutely, like Nicholas touched upon it, like it's already like we're worried about the amount of governance actions that's coming in and how we'll handle that with CC members. So absolutely, it's something I would strongly advocate for in terms of the budget, in terms of tooling. And we do have a budget segment for that. So I appreciate that comment. It's something I'm considering as well. And yeah, let's definitely talk more about that as this evolves.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Logan, for that adding that question. And the floor is open if anyone else has any questions for the Cardano Civics Committee regarding their 2025 roadmap and the proposal that they have to get funding from the Treasury to improve on Cardano's governance.
No, but thank you for all the hard work.
Thank you. I honestly, this is like why I feel we're a bit on the back foot. Like we really push so hard for this Constitution Convention and where we are at currently. But we promise we'll become strong about this. I hope to join more of these sessions and make sure we give even more detailed information as we continue this budget process.
Thank you, Ace. And Phil Lewis, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, hi. Just a question, actually more about Intersect and internal governance of Intersect. Is that being covered by the Civics Committee as well?
No. No, that's actually the great news. That's why they're called the Cardano Civics Committee. It's specifically keeping them externally focused on Cardano's governance and not internally focused on Intersect's governance. That is the purvey.
How's that built? Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Of the Intersect Steering Committee. That's their job.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. As long as it's being addressed, that's the important thing.
Yeah, thank Phil. That's a great question. I really appreciate you adding it because it gives an important nuance to the conversation here. But yes, Intersect's internal governance is the purvey of the Intersect Steering Committee. So, all right.
Which is made up of the chairs of all the committees. So the chair here basically has a say in that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam, for adding that as well. Absolutely. So the elections at Intersect are of utmost importance, guys. That's how you steer the governance of Intersect. Logan, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, just you guys think about, Cardano governance probably more than 99.999% of people. So I just want to hear your guys' takes on where are the holes in kind of the governance user experience right now. What tools need to be built sooner rather than later, in your guys' opinion, to make sure that once the hard fork hits, we're actually ready for it and people can enjoy participating in Cardano? And I think one other thing to add to the question is we have to somehow in the Cardano ecosystem make it a social norm to like delegate to someone who actually participates in governance, because I mean, with recent events and everything like that, we just need more participation, and I think it's a good thing to really start strategizing around. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Logan. Aistine or Nico, what do you guys think? What are the biggest holes in the governance UX right now? Where do we have to work the hardest?
That's a great question, and I think we both can say a lot about this. Nicholas, I know you want to say a bit about this as well. That's why we started with accessibility as number one in terms of priority. Like, we really see that it has to be something that's quite easy to get. It should be in your own language. So like translation work that we're doing, that's a big gap currently. Needs to be done ASAP. And we are prioritizing that. And then the next thing for me is like SPOs. They have been like this forgotten class in terms of how we're doing governance. I think this is really crucial because we have quite a high threshold and we need to reach those thresholds. So if we're going to have governance actions working. So for me, how that looks like is, I think the SPOs are really used to this like tooling that we have. Many of the 3000 operators have, like we have Atala staking pool tooling, you have the Gillo operators tooling, like to ensure that we collaborate and make sure it's accessible and easy for them to do actual voting. So, but part of that is also like hardware key management. So many SPOs are really thinking about safety. So making sure that we have in place all of these things and making sure that the different type of hardware keys are possible to use for governance actions as well. What I will say, like lastly, in terms of this accessibility, I think making it way easier to actually just delegate. Like it should be mobile apps. It should be something that you think about automatically when you are considering delegating to an SPO. You're also considering delegating to a DRep. And what I also hope to see in the future, I don't think this is not part of the platform, but this is my long-term thinking. Ideally, like governance on Cardano will be kept alive if it's not just like the blockchain governance itself. We should have this platform where we have all of the DAOs and all of the other types of governance activity going around, all of the side chains, all this together. So it's easy to have one place to get that information. And then you need to make sure that you're not having an information overload. So you should be able to subscribe to what type of data you want from those platforms. And we need to make sure that there's no like one person or one entity having stewardship of that data. So these platforms need to be linked to the on-chain activity, and then it should be voluntarily how you choose to filter this data, and it should be easily accessible. I think that is a long-term solution for keeping governance alive. And I actually think after accessibility, that's the second most important thing, making sure that governance is kept alive and easy enough that you can keep up with it for the foreseeable future.
That was a great answer, Hastings. Thank you. Nico, do you have anything you want to add on that one? That was a pretty bold question there.
No, I mean, what Einstein said is just perfect. And I would just add, right, I think we saw that now when Daedalus implemented governance features, that the total amount of stake delegated participating in governance increased by 500 million ADA in just one epoch, right, which was an increase of 20% or a bit more, which was fantastic, right? And it's really my opinion that if we implement governance features directly in the wallets, we would increase that even more, because every time a user needs to switch platform, or right, even if it's conveniently connecting your wallet to a really nice tool or website, right, you lose people. And if it's in their app, if it's in their wallet, their mobile phone, then hopefully people are also encouraged to delegate and participate in governance. And then also to just reiterate what Einstein said with numbers, the Plomin hard fork info action, only 7% of SPOs participated in that up until now. 7%. And the approval threshold for the hard fork is 51%. I know it's not right, it's an info action that doesn't do anything on chain, but it's just it just shows us that, you know, it's not that easy to participate for SPOs. And some might even not be aware that they even can do that, right? It's the reality. Not everyone is as involved in governance as we are. So what we need to do is focus on accessibility, provide the right tooling, and also educate people. Because with the whole, I mean, I was not around at that time when stake pools spun up, but I think everyone at that time was really about driving this message of delegate to a pool, move your funds from exchanges, participate directly, secure the network. And yeah, that's where we need to get to also with governance.
Thank you,
It
Nico.
took a number of years to get stake delegation up. I mean, I think it was probably over the like 3 years basically to get to where we're at right now. So I mean, it was not instantaneous, and it was something we were worried about for a long time. But yeah, to your point, having it simple in the wallet absolutely definitely improves the participation.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Mike Lehrman, I saw you had a hand up. You want to go ahead and add your question?
Yeah, sorry. I have a call in 5 minutes.
No worries.
I guess my question was, if for some reason the Constitution does not get voted in and the DReps vote against it, what is I guess, the short and quick of how it would go down in order to get another Constitution up for grabs, and then, in order for people to vote on, and then what does that mean for Intersect in terms of funding runway?
I'll jump on that one for you, Mike. So first of all, we do have a plan in place to begin to speak to the DReps who are voting no. If there's something that can be changed to the existing constitution that would make them a yes vote. That's just like any other political system you'd have anywhere. If you have a substantial amount, it'd have to come through with civics and the DReps, and Intersect would have to do its best job to to bring all of those people together, have conversations, the ones that are holding out as no's, to make the changes necessary. There's a pretty good following of the community that's in approval of it, because they can see the long process that we all went through as a community to get to this one. So and the delegates sent a very strong signal that this was the Constitution that we should start with, and then continue to adapt it as our needs change. So I think that's the other message that seems to have resonated, is that this isn't the end of our Constitution. This is the beginning of our Constitution. From here, we're going to adapt. So I think that may get us over the line. I certainly hope so. But if it doesn't, then it'll be the DReps who are saying no and have something that they absolutely can't say yes about. Can we possibly get that change implemented to get them to say yes? And we'd have to do a new info action, and then that would be the yes vote if that were the case. So that hopefully doesn't happen, but that's the plan if that does need to happen. And what does that do to Intersect? Well, if we don't get past the Constitution and onto the budget, and then also pass the budget, Intersect's funds run out. It is what it is. There is no more magic funding. There's nothing that's out there for us. We're unlocking the Constitution. We're unlocking the Treasury and the management of the Treasury to the community. If we're not ready for it and we vote no as DReps, well, then we voted no, and Cardano will slow down. There'll still be development happening. Things will still be going on, but funding will be done. That's what you face in a moment like this. So it is very important that we come together, talk about what our differences are, figure it out, and see if we have a path forward with the things that are being presented.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Great question. Appreciate it very much. Hey, Juan Sierra, how are you, man? Go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joy. Thank you. Thank you guys for this. This is awesome. I like very much what I heard, not only for product committee, but also for civics. And I have a question for Einstein about, what type of de-incentivized system can we put together to incentivize the reps to participate, to incentivize them to participate? In other words, disincentivize them for not participating. Is there anything that because the reality is that community work is always a challenge. Boards of directors across the board, they are always a lot of people when there are problems. I mean, a lot of people come to the meetings when there are problems, but when there are not, when something is coming along well, only 5-6 people make the decisions. So I just thinking that eventually when the reps are established and they have a lot of delegation on them, they may come easier on the participation. Is there any way that you guys have foreseen to incentivize participation?
It's also a great question, and let me just start with what I said earlier. It's really important for the civics that we include the DReps in that discussion. So whatever I say next is my current thinking about this, and what the first we want to do is make sure we have those workshops with the DReps on this topic and the community at large. But you have already this activity requirement, but it only gives a requirement to have some form of general activity, right? So you could be a DRep voting on a single thing every epoch and keep having this activity requirement. So how do we encourage quality, and how do we encourage DReps that have proper rationales? Some of the research models to have like this cutoff where they have like the top 150, so in terms of popularity, and then in those models, it's really the burden of the ADA holder. So then you need to really educate the ADA holder on who do you delegate to, what does quality look like, what could be signs of things you should be looking out for. We had the same like with delegating to SPOs. Like Professor Aguilas wrote like this paper or this like information about what he believes are good game theory about how staking pools should be operating. And we'll probably have something like that for DReps as well. But the problem with this like cutoff, like the strict cutoff, is like, what do you do about when some of these fall off? Like, who will replace them? Because all of the people or all of the DReps that's behind this cutoff line, let's say it's 100 DReps, top 100, then number 101 and onwards, they will easily fall off, and it will be very hard to replace them. In SPOs, you don't have this like very strict linear cutoff. You have like one block, at least you get this minimum fee and you get some form of reward. So I believe we need to look into a model where we don't have a pure cutoff, because then it will be really hard to replace as people fall off with people with sufficient skill and knowledge and people that have been able to follow the governance for all of that process. So that is part of the answer to me, Johan. But I think this is something we need to establish working groups around the reward schemes. It was briefly mentioned through the DREP Pioneer program, but I think they only mentions the four research options, and I think the community now, once DReps have settled a bit, will know more about what do we need in terms of like what's the time requirements, how does DReps look like? Are there organizational DReps? How many of them are there? Do we have like script DReps? Like what does it look like? And that's why it's a bit challenging to give like a straightforward answer to it. That it really depends on how does this DRep look like for the future. So I hope that gives you an idea on where we are currently on thinking about this.
Yes, Einstein, thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Nico. I was saying thank you, Aistine, for the answer. Thank you, Juan Sierra, for that great question. And I'm noticing that we are at the top of the hour. So that is the conclusion of the main session, with each of the committees giving us their time and giving us their presentations. We did have this scheduled for an additional 30 minutes, but I believe some folks had to leave in order to make other meetings. So if you have other questions, for the budget committee in general, or for the Cardano Civics Committee or the product committee, we're happy to take them. At very least, we'll take them and pass them on to those that have to leave, and be able to share those questions and get them back to you at a later time. But we have an additional 30 minutes of overtime here for folks that may have other questions. But otherwise, if there are no questions, I'm going to be happy to let y'all go. But no, Darlington's going to ruin that for us. He's got a question. Hey, Darlington, what's going on?
It's a really easy question. Hopefully. Yeah, this is great. I will try to come to more of these going forward. I was just curious if I missed the MCC's presentation, if that was today.
MCC was yesterday. I will post that video. I believe I'm going to be able to get that video posted out by probably mid-morning tomorrow. It's still got a process, but I should have it out by mid-morning tomorrow.
Oh, that would be nice. That's that was yesterday. Okay. Well, see, easy question.
Yeah.
I saved the hard question for Cardano over coffee. No.
There you go. I've got to come on to you guys again. I need to come sit at Cardano over coffee again one of these days soon. So we'll definitely do that. So, all right. So any other questions that anybody might have? We're happy to take them. We've got a few more minutes here.
Well, I was thinking, would you mind going over schedules for holidays and what is coming, so we can have a.
Sure, no problem. I mean, I could give you a brief thumbnail of what it looks like for the next couple of weeks. There's the big items that will occur starting Friday. It's actually going to happen on Saturday morning at some point. Is that the Plomin hard fork governance action will go on chain sometime Saturday morning. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you. And it's going to be you have who's going to do that with you, Lawrence? That was Ryan.
It's Ryan and myself. So Ryan's doing the metadata, and then I'm doing the approval.
All right, perfect.
Do we need to kind of maybe whip the SPOs into voting? I mean, because I'm seeing the info action for the Plum and Hard Fork, and SPO participation was pretty weak. And I don't know statistically if that's true in general, and whether or not we need to smack them around and say we can't hard fork without you guys voting.
This will be the first opportunity, but you have had a good hand at that. Rick McCracken's had a good hand at that. If you guys don't mind working on that, whip the SPOs a bit. Let's see if we can get this over the line.
What's the
voted with their nodes, right?
What threshold do we need to achieve from an SPO stake perspective?
51% for the SPO stake
of all staked ADA.
51%.
So yeah, so he's staked.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. We got work to do. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a big lift. It was moved down. It was originally 67. It was moved down. The protocol and parameters working group came up with a request to reduce that one to 51%. So it was reduced, but yes, it is still 51%.
Okay. The DRep side I'm not worried about because they're all registered, right? They're already participating. Right? They're active. It's the SPOs that are dormant that are not incentivized. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, please. Obviously, you guys have a good hand at that. You have good communication channels. Sam, I know, has good communication channels. That's going to be critical. So that's one thing that is going to drop on Saturday morning, because Ryan and Lawrence are going to get that on Saturday morning. So thank you guys for working on that on Saturday. And once that's on, the clock starts ticking for 6 weeks. That we need to get this over that line. And this is our first real opportunity that it's a real governance action with real on-chain, this is it. This is what it looks like. This is the first time we're doing this, and we're going to have to make it happen. So, and following that, we are going to put in the GovTools forum also this weekend. We will have in the GovTools forum the info action proposed for the net change limit. That's going to go up. It's ready for discussion. We're going to do 2 weeks of discussion on that, and then the net change limit will then move to its actual info action. This is us trying to use best practice. So we're going to GovTool first in the forum, and then after receiving feedback, posting the action on chain. So we are going to stick with the same threshold for approval there that we have for the Treasury withdrawal action. The current Treasury withdrawal action is 67%. Therefore, we're going to do 67% for net change limit and move it forward and see where we stand on that. So that's our first brush with the very first element of the budget to see how where we're at for approval on that. So those are the big things that are happening before the end of the year. Everything else will continue to happen in January. I know there's a couple of informal meetings at the end of this week and the beginning of next week, but they are just that. They're informal meetings. Nothing serious and formal planned. Other than those two big items. So helping to move the community toward giving feedback on the net change limit and making the SPOs making the decision to vote on the hard fork are the two big things to concentrate on over the holidays. I'll be available as well during that time frame to answer questions on the net change limit. We're going to be working on the budget together. Lawrence and I have already agreed that we will be working on the budget to be able to present what we'd like to show from all of this work that's come together from all of these committees, what we believe is the right approach for 2025, and that also will go on the forum first for feedback, so that we can begin crafting what the budgets plural look like for 2025. So hope that helped, Juan.
Yes, great response. Thanks a lot, Joey. Appreciate that.
Pleasure. All right. Lawrence, you have any other final thoughts for the folks as we're wrapping up to the end here?
No, the only thing I think to add is, happy Christmas, everyone, and I hope you spend the next few weeks with your families, enjoying the peace and quiet, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the new year.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you all. We hope I also from me and my family, we hope that you have a happy holidays and a wonderful beginning of your new year. And I'm sure I'll see many of you between now and then. But for the rest of you, enjoy the vacation. We'll see you in the new year. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy holiday, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you much.